The notary's pen clicked against his clipboard as my son-in-law Bradley smiled that snake oil grin of his. "We've just sold this house," he announced, gesturing around my living room like he was displaying a prize on a game show. "You're going to a nursing home." I set down my coffee cup with the steady hand of someone who'd been expecting this moment for months. "Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button." You know, when your daughter marries a man who wears cologne to Sunday dinner and calls you Mother Eleanor like he's auditioning for a period drama, you start paying attention to the details. And Bradley Morrison had been leaving quite a trail of interesting details for the past 18 months. "Perfect," I said, smoothing my cardigan with deliberate calm. "Let's stop at the police station first. They're very interested in what I sent them about you." The color drained from Bradley's face faster than water from a broken faucet. The notary looked confused, shuffling his papers like maybe he'd wandered into the wrong family drama. My daughter Sarah stood frozen in the doorway, her mouth forming a perfect little O of surprise. It all started 6 months ago when I noticed Bradley's expensive new watch. Funny thing about luxury timepieces, they leave quite an impression when you're embezzling from your law firm's client trust fund. See, I may be 73, but I wasn't born yesterday, and I certainly wasn't born stupid. "What are you talking about?" Bradley's voice cracked like a teenage boy asking someone to prom. The confident swagger he'd worn into my house was melting away like ice cream on hot pavement. I'd been tracking his little financial adventures since March. Bank statements have a way of telling stories when you know how to read between the lines. And when your son-in-law suddenly starts throwing around money like he won the lottery, but his salary hasn't changed, well, that's when an old teacher's instincts kick in. The truth was, I'd been building my case against Bradley Morrison for months, documenting every suspicious transaction, every unexplained purchase, every lie he told about where the money was coming from. My late husband, Harold, always said the best defense was a good offense. And honey, I'd been playing offense since the day I realized what Bradley was really up to. Sarah finally found her voice. "Mom, what's going on? What police station? What did you send them?" I looked at my daughter. Beautiful, trusting Sarah, who believed her husband when he said his sudden wealth came from investment bonuses and client gifts. Poor thing had no idea she'd married a white-collar criminal who was about to drag her down with him. "Oh, sweetheart," I said, patting her arm gently. I sent them copies of Bradley's real bank records, the ones he thought I'd never find. I turned back to Bradley, whose face had gone from pale to green. "Turns out your password isn't as clever as you think it is. Sarah 2019, really? The year you got married?" How romantic. The notary was backing toward the door now, clearly wanting no part of whatever family explosion was about to happen. Smart man. This was going to get interesting. Bradley's jaw was working like he was chewing invisible gum. You went through my computer? Honey, you left it open on my kitchen table last Sunday while you were outside smoking those awful cigarettes you think Sarah doesn't know about. I smiled sweetly. And when a spreadsheet titled Client Fund Transfers is just sitting there, well, curiosity got the better of me. That's when Bradley made his first real mistake of the day. Instead of coming clean or trying to negotiate, he doubled down on his arrogance. "You crazy old bat. You don't know what you're talking about. Those records don't prove anything." Wrong answer, Bradley. Very wrong answer. "Detective Martinez seemed to think they proved quite a lot when I met with him yesterday," I said, watching Bradley's eyes go wide. "Especially the part where you moved $47,000 from the Henderson estate account into your personal checking. The Hendersons are buried in Grove Cemetery, by the way. Lovely couple. Too bad they can't testify about where their money went." The silence in my living room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Sarah looked like she'd been slapped. The notary was practically running for the door. And Bradley? Well, Bradley looked like a man who'd just realized his house of cards was falling down around his ears. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Sarah sank into my recliner like her legs had given out. "Bradley, please tell me Mom's making this up. Please tell me you didn't—" Her voice trailed off as she studied her husband's face, seeing what I'd been seeing for months. The notary cleared his throat. Perhaps I should reschedule this appointment for another time. He was already stuffing papers back into his briefcase with the speed of someone fleeing a crime scene. "Oh no," I said pleasantly. "Don't leave on our account. This shouldn't take long." I turned to Bradley, who was now sweating through his expensive shirt. Unless you'd like to explain to everyone here how you afforded that BMW in the driveway? The one with the $847 monthly payment? Bradley's mouth opened and closed, like a fish gasping for air. I'd done my homework. You see, while he thought I was just some doddering old widow he could manipulate and bulldoze, I'd been methodically building a file that would make the FBI proud. The car's financed through the firm, he managed to stammer. Interesting, I mused, pulling my phone from my purse. Because when I called Bentley and Associates yesterday, they seemed very surprised to hear their junior associate had taken out a car loan in the firm's name. Carol in accounting was particularly chatty about it. Sarah made a sound like she was choking. You called his work? Honey, I've called a lot of places this week. I scrolled through my phone's call log for effect. The bank, the police, that fancy restaurant where Bradley's been taking his lunch meetings with Amanda from the title company. Yes, dear. I know about Amanda too. Now that got a reaction. Bradley shot to his feet like someone had lit a fire under him. You're insane. You can't just go around making accusations. Accusations? I raised an eyebrow. Oh, Bradley, these aren't accusations. These are documented facts. Like the fact that you've been skimming money from client accounts for 8 months. Or the fact that you've been meeting Amanda at the Marriott every Tuesday for the past 2 months. Room 247, if anyone's keeping track. Sarah's face went white as a ghost. The poor girl was just now realizing that her perfect marriage was built on lies, and her husband was a cheating thief. Sometimes the truth hits like a freight train, and sometimes it hits like a sledgehammer to the chest. How? Bradley started, then stopped himself before he could finish incriminating himself further. How did I know? I smiled that sweet grandmother smile I'd perfected over the years. Honey, you underestimated the wrong old lady. See, when you've been a high school principal for 35 years, you develop certain skills. Kids think they're sneaky, but adults? Adults are just kids with credit cards and bigger lies. The truth was, I'd hired a private investigator. Harold's life insurance money had to be good for something, and watching Bradley squirm was worth every penny I'd paid Detective 𝑽𝒐𝒊𝒄𝒆𝒔. Ray was retired police, built like a linebacker, and had a particular talent for following cheating husbands without being noticed. Mom, Sarah whispered, tears starting to stream down her face. How long have you known? About the stealing? 3 months? About Amanda? 6 weeks. I sat back down on my sofa, suddenly feeling every one of my 73 years. I kept hoping I was wrong, sweetheart. I kept hoping your husband would prove me wrong. Bradley was pacing now, his hands shaking as he ran them through his hair. This is all circumstantial. You can't prove anything. Oh, Bradley. I shook my head sadly. I really wish you'd stop talking. Every word is just making this worse for yourself. That's when I pulled out the ace I'd been saving. From my purse, I withdrew a small recording device and set it on the coffee table. Bradley stared at it like I'd just produced a live snake. This little gadget has been recording our conversation since you walked in here with your notary friend. I patted the device affectionately. Detective Martinez suggested I might want to document any threats or attempts at elder abuse. Trying to force me out of my home certainly qualifies, don't you think? The notary was definitely leaving now, mumbling something about coming back later as he rushed for the door. Smart man. What was about to happen wasn't going to be pretty. Bradley lunged for the recording device, but I was quicker than he expected. Amazing how fast you can move when you've been planning for exactly this moment. I wouldn't, I said calmly, my hand covering the device. Detective Martinez is expecting my call in exactly 15 minutes. If he doesn't hear from me, he's instructed to send a patrol car to check on my welfare. Sarah was crying harder now, her whole world crashing down around her. My heart broke for her, but sometimes you have to tear down the lie before you can build something real. Bradley, I said gently, you have exactly one chance to do the right thing here. Come clean to Sarah, cooperate with the police, and maybe we can all figure out how to fix this mess. But Bradley Morrison had never been the type to do the right thing, and he was about to prove that in spectacular fashion. Bradley's face twisted into something ugly, the charming mask finally slipping completely. You think you're so smart, don't you, Eleanor? Sitting here in your little house playing detective. He stepped closer, and I could smell the desperation on him like cheap cologne. Smart enough, I replied evenly, keeping my hand firmly on the recording device. Sarah stood up, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. Bradley, just tell me the truth. Please, is what she's saying real? For a moment I thought he might actually come clean. His shoulders sagged, and he looked at Sarah with something that might have been genuine regret. But then his phone buzzed, and when he glanced at it, his expression hardened again. This is all lies, he said firmly. Your mother's been trying to break us up since our wedding. She's never liked me, and now she's making up stories because she can't stand that we're happy. I actually laughed. Couldn't help myself. Oh, honey, if I wanted to make up stories about you, I'd have come up with something far more creative than embezzlement and adultery. Those are so common, they're practically boring. Sarah looked between us like she was watching a tennis match, trying to figure out where the truth lay. Poor thing. 3 years of marriage to a liar will mess with your ability to trust your own instincts. Prove it, Bradley said suddenly. If you have all this evidence, prove it right now. Gladly. I reached into my purse again and pulled out a manila folder that was thick with papers. Let's start with your bank statements. Shall we? The ones from your personal account that show deposits that don't match your salary. I spread the papers across my coffee table like I was dealing cards. March 15th, $3,200 deposit. March 22nd, $4,800. March 29th, $12,900. I looked up at Sarah. Your husband makes $3,200 a month after taxes. Sweetheart, where do you suppose this extra money came from? Bradley made another grab for the papers, but I'd positioned myself strategically. 73 doesn't mean helpless, especially when you've had months to plan for this confrontation. Those are private financial records, he shouted. You can't just... Actually, I can. I smiled sweetly. See, when you use your wife's name as a reference on your bank applications and your wife gives her mother permission to access those records, well, let's just say the bank was very helpful. Sarah's eyes widened. I never gave you permission to... Check your email from last Tuesday. Dear, I sent you a request. You replied, Sure, Mom, whatever you need. Apparently, you didn't read the fine print. I shrugged. To be fair, you were dealing with that nasty flu at the time. The look on Bradley's face was priceless. He was beginning to realize that he'd been outmaneuvered by someone he'd consistently underestimated. It's a beautiful thing, watching an arrogant man discover he's not nearly as smart as he thinks he is. Now, I continued, shuffling through the papers, let's talk about your lunch receipts from Romano's restaurant. 7 times in the past 2 months, always on Tuesdays, always for 2 people. Always charged to your personal credit card. Funny thing is, Sarah's been working Tuesday lunch shifts at the clinic for the past 6 months. Sarah's hand flew to her throat. You've been going to Romano's? But you said you hated that place. You said it was pretentious and overpriced. Apparently, it's perfect for impressing title company employees named Amanda, I added helpfully. That's when Bradley finally snapped. You vindictive old witch! You're destroying my marriage because you can't stand that Sarah chose me over you. I set down the papers and looked at him with the same expression I'd used on countless teenagers who thought they could intimidate their way out of trouble. Bradley Morrison, I've dealt with bullies for 35 years. You're not even in the top 10. My phone rang then. Perfect timing, really. I glanced at the screen and smiled. Oh, that's Detective Martinez now, right on schedule. Bradley's face went from red to white so fast I thought he might faint. Sarah looked like she was about to throw up, and honestly, I couldn't blame her. Learning that your husband is a criminal and a cheater in the span of 20 minutes would be rough on anyone. Should I answer it? I asked pleasantly, letting the phone ring while I watched Bradley sweat. Or would you like to explain to Detective Martinez yourself why you thought forcing an elderly woman out of her home was a good idea? Don't, Bradley said quickly. Don't answer it. Why not? I thought I was just a crazy old lady making up stories. I tilted my head innocently. Unless, of course, there's some truth to what I've been saying. The phone stopped ringing, then immediately started again. Detective Martinez was persistent, which was one of the things I liked about him. Tick-tock, Bradley, I said softly. He's going to keep calling until I answer. And if I don't answer soon, well, like I said, he has instructions. Sarah was staring at her husband now, really seeing him for the first time in months, maybe years. Bradley, she whispered, what did you do? And that's when Bradley Morrison made the biggest mistake of his life. Instead of confessing, instead of throwing himself on our mercy, he decided to make one last desperate play. Fine, he snarled, reaching into his jacket pocket. "You want to play games, Eleanor? Let's play." What Bradley pulled from his pocket wasn't a weapon. It was something much more dangerous. A legal document with official-looking seals and signatures. He slammed it down on top of my carefully organized evidence with a sound like a gavel. "Guardianship papers," he announced triumphantly. "Signed by Judge Harrison yesterday. As of 9 a.m. this morning, I am Eleanor Blackwood's legal guardian due to her declining mental capacity and inability to manage her own affairs." Sarah gasped. I just smiled. "Oh, Bradley," I said, shaking my head sadly. "You really should have checked who Judge Harrison's golf partner is." The smug expression faltered on his face. "What?" "Harold Kowalski, Detective Ray's older brother. The same Harold who's been playing 18 holes with Judge Harrison every Saturday for the past 15 years. I picked up the document and examined it with the thoroughness of someone who'd been expecting exactly this move. The same Harold who called me yesterday to warn me that someone was trying to forge guardianship papers using his friend's name. You could have heard a pin drop in my living room. Bradley's mouth was hanging open like a broken gate, and Sarah looked like she was watching a magic show she couldn't quite figure out. "You see," I continued, standing up and walking to my kitchen counter, "when you've been married to a police officer for 47 years, you learn that the criminal mind isn't nearly as creative as it thinks it is. Document forgery is actually quite common in elder abuse cases." I returned with a magnifying glass. Harold's old evidence kit had come in handy more than once over the years. "Judge Harrison's signature is very distinctive. See this little flourish on the H and the way he dots his I's? Your forger missed those details." Bradley was backing toward the door now, but I wasn't done with my show and tell. "Also," I added conversationally, "Judge Harrison has been on vacation in Florida since Monday. Golf tournament in Tampa. I have his hotel receipt right here, courtesy of Harold Kowalski, who was kind enough to call and confirm his brother's alibi." The legal document was shaking in Bradley's hands now. Sarah had gone from crying to staring at her husband like she'd never seen him before in her life. "How?" Bradley started. "How did I know you'd try the guardianship scam?" I settled back into my chair like a cat who'd just caught a very large mouse. "Because Ray Kowalski told me it's the most common next step when financial elder abuse gets discovered. Discredit the victim, question their mental capacity, take legal control of their assets." My phone started ringing again. This time I answered it on the first ring. "Hello, Detective Martinez. Yes, he's here. Yes, he brought the fake papers just like you predicted." I listened for a moment, nodding. "Of course. We'll wait right here." I hung up and looked at Bradley with something approaching pity. "Detective Martinez will be here in about 10 minutes. He's bringing a handwriting expert and a warrant." That's when Sarah finally found her voice. "Bradley, please tell me you didn't forge legal documents. Please tell me this is all some terrible misunderstanding." Bradley was sweating through his shirt now, perspiration beading on his forehead like he was standing under stage lights. "Sarah, baby, you have to understand. Your mother's been trying to—" "Stop." Sarah held up her hand. "Just stop. Don't lie to me anymore. I can't handle any more lies." The truth was hitting her in waves now. The stealing, the cheating, the forgery, the attempt to have me declared incompetent. It was like watching someone realize they'd been living in a house of mirrors, and every surface they'd trusted was just another illusion. "The nursing home papers," I said gently, gesturing to the notary's abandoned documents. "How were you planning to pay for that, Bradley? The good facilities run about $8,000 a month. On your salary, after you factor in your car payment, your gambling debts, and Amanda's little shopping trips—" "Gambling debts?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. I nodded sadly. "Tuesday nights at the casino boat. Usually loses about $200 a week. Sometimes more." I looked at Bradley with genuine sympathy now. "Addiction is a terrible thing, honey. Gambling, lying, stealing. They all feed each other until you can't tell where one starts and the other begins." Bradley collapsed into my husband's old armchair, his head in his hands. For the first time since he'd walked into my house with his fake papers and his bigger lies, he looked like what he really was, a scared, desperate man who'd gotten in way over his head. "I never meant for it to go this far," he mumbled through his fingers. "But it did," I said softly. "And now you have a choice. You can keep digging yourself deeper, or you can start climbing out. Through my front window, I could see a police car turning onto my street. Detective Martinez was early, which meant he was taking this case very seriously indeed. "Bradley," Sarah said, her voice stronger now. "Look at me." He raised his head, and I saw tears in his eyes for the first time since I'd known him. "Is any of it true?" she asked. "Any of what she's saying?" And for just a moment, I thought Bradley Morrison might actually tell the truth. Bradley looked at Sarah with the expression of a man standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing he was about to fall. "Yes," he whispered. "It's all true." The word hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Sarah's face crumpled, and she made a sound I hope I never have to hear again, the sound of a heart breaking in real time. "How much?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "How much did you steal?" $87,000. The words came out like a confession at a deathbed. "Over 8 months. Detective Martinez's footsteps were coming up my front walk. Through the window, I could see him with 2 other officers and a woman carrying what looked like a forensics kit. The cavalry had arrived. "And Amanda?" Sarah's tears were flowing freely now, but her voice was steady. Bradley nodded miserably. 6 months. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry." The doorbell rang. I stood up slowly, every joint protesting. "I'll get that." Detective Martinez looked exactly like what you'd expect from a 30-year police veteran. Gray hair, kind eyes, and the posture of someone who'd seen it all but still believed in justice. "Mrs. Blackwood, how are you holding up?" "I'm fine, Detective. Come in. I believe you'll want to speak with Mr. Morrison." The next few hours were a blur of official procedures, evidence bags, and Miranda rights being read. Bradley didn't resist. He seemed almost relieved to finally stop running from the truth. The handwriting expert confirmed what I already knew about the forged guardianship papers. The forensics team found enough evidence on Bradley's laptop to put him away for a very long time. Sarah sat on my couch through it all, staring at nothing, occasionally wiping tears from her cheeks. My heart ached for her. She was 32 years old, and her entire life had just imploded. "Mrs. Morrison," Detective Martinez said gently, "you should know that as far as we can determine, you had no knowledge of your husband's activities. You're not in any legal trouble." Sarah nodded numbly. "What happens now? Your husband will likely plead guilty to embezzlement, fraud, and forgery charges. He's looking at 5 to 7 years, probably serve 3 with good behavior." After they took Bradley away in handcuffs, a sight I wish Sarah hadn't had to see, Detective Martinez lingered to tie up loose ends. "Mrs. Blackwood, I have to ask, how did you figure it all out?" Most people would have missed the signs completely. I poured him a cup of coffee and settled into my chair. "Detective, when you live with a police officer for 47 years, you learn to notice when things don't add up. Harold always said the truth has a weight to it that lies can't match. But the investigation, the evidence gathering, that was professional-level work." I smiled. I had a good teacher, and I had help. I pulled out a business card and handed it to him. "𝑽𝒐𝒊𝒄𝒆𝒔, retired detective, private investigator. Harold's old partner." Martinez grinned. "𝑽𝒐𝒊𝒄𝒆𝒔 trained half the force. I should have known." After the detective left, it was just Sarah and me in my suddenly quiet house. She was still sitting on the couch, staring at the spot where her husband had confessed to destroying their marriage and their future. "I don't know what to do," she said finally. I sat down beside her and took her hand. "You start over, sweetheart, one day at a time." "Where? How? The house is in both our names. His debts. Oh God, his debts. Am I responsible for what he stole? The stolen money isn't your debt, but the credit cards, the car loan, the mortgage, those you'll need to deal with. But Sarah, you're young, you're smart, you have a good job. You'll be okay." She leaned against me then, like she used to when she was little, and the world felt too big and scary. "I'm so embarrassed, Mom. How did I not see it? How did I not know? Because love makes us want to believe the best in people. That's not a flaw, sweetheart. That's what makes you human." We sat in silence for a while, holding each other, while the reality of the day settled around us like dust after a storm. "Mom," Sarah said eventually, "can I ask you something?" "Anything. Why didn't you just tell me? Why did you wait for him to come here with those papers?" I considered my answer carefully. "Because you wouldn't have believed me if I'd just accused him. You loved him, trusted him. You needed to see for yourself who he really was. So you let him try to force you out of your home? Honey, I knew he was going to try something desperate when the police started closing in. Ray and Detective Martinez set up the whole thing. We wanted Bradley to incriminate himself completely, leave no room for doubt. Sarah pulled back to look at me. You were never in any real danger? There were 3 unmarked cars on this street, and Detective Martinez was listening to everything through my phone. If things had gone bad, help was 30 seconds away. But what if he'd had a gun? What if he'd hurt you? I patted her hand. Sarah, your husband was a coward and a liar, but he wasn't violent. Men like Bradley take the easy way out. They steal, they cheat, they forge documents. They don't usually resort to physical violence unless they're cornered with no other options. Usually, 𝑽𝒐𝒊𝒄𝒆𝒔 has been watching him for 3 months. We knew his patterns, his limitations, his psychology. Today went exactly as we expected it would. Sarah shook her head in amazement. I married a criminal and didn't know it. You figured it out in 6 months. You married someone you thought you knew. He turned into a criminal gradually, making one bad choice after another. There's a difference. As the sun set through my living room windows, we began making plans for Sarah's future. She would stay with me temporarily while she sorted out the legal and financial mess Bradley had left behind. She would change her name back to Blackwood. She would rebuild her life from the ground up. But first, there was one more surprise waiting for us both. 3 days after Bradley's arrest, Sarah was in my kitchen making pancakes when someone knocked on my front door. Not the doorbell, an actual knock, soft and hesitant. Through the window, I could see a young woman about Sarah's age, holding the hand of a little boy who couldn't have been more than 4 years old. The woman looked nervous, constantly glancing over her shoulder like she was afraid someone might be following her. Mrs. Blackwood, she said when I opened the door. I'm Amanda Chen. I think we need to talk. Sarah appeared behind me, still holding a spatula. The 2 women stared at each other for a long moment, the wife and the mistress, meeting for the first time under circumstances that would have made a soap opera writer weep with joy. This is Tyler, Amanda said, gently nudging the little boy forward. Bradley's son. I felt Sarah go rigid beside me. The pancake batter dripped from her spatula onto my hardwood floor, but none of us moved to clean it up. May we come in? Amanda asked quietly. I stepped aside, my mind racing. Bradley had a son he'd never mentioned, never acknowledged, never supported financially despite stealing thousands of dollars. The picture was getting clearer, and it wasn't pretty. Amanda sat on the edge of my sofa like she was ready to bolt at any moment. Tyler climbed onto her lap and stared at Sarah with the wide, curious eyes that only small children possess. I saw the news, Amanda said, about Bradley being arrested. I thought you should know about Tyler. Sarah finally found her voice. How old is he? 4. He'll be 5 in November. I did the math automatically. Tyler had been conceived 6 months before Sarah and Bradley's wedding. The cheating had been going on a lot longer than I'd thought. Does Bradley know? Sarah asked. Amanda nodded. He's known since I was pregnant. He promised he'd leave you after the wedding, said it was just for appearances. Then he said he needed time to figure out his finances. Then it was always something else. Sarah sat down heavily in my recliner. What kind of support has he been giving you? Nothing official. He'd give me cash sometimes, maybe $300 or $400 a month when he had it. But lately, she trailed off, looking embarrassed. Lately, the gambling was eating up all his extra money, I finished. Amanda's eyes widened. You know about the gambling? I know about a lot of things, including the fact that you work for Meridian Title Company and you've been helping Bradley hide assets from his law firm's audit. The color drained from Amanda's face. How do you? Because I've spent the last 3 months investigating everyone in my son-in-law's life. The question is, Amanda, are you here because you're worried about Tyler or because you're worried about going to jail? Tyler was getting restless, squirming in his mother's lap and looking around my living room with the natural curiosity of a 4-year-old. He spotted the photo of Harold in his police uniform on the mantelpiece and pointed at it. Police, he said proudly, like he was showing off his vocabulary. That's right, I said gently. That was my husband. He was a police officer for 30 years. Tyler scrambled down from his mother's lap and walked over to examine the photo more closely. My daddy's in trouble with the police, he announced matter-of-factly. The simple innocence of that statement hit both Sarah and Amanda like a slap. Here was a 4-year-old boy whose father was a criminal, whose mother was potentially complicit in financial fraud, whose existence had just blown up another family's life. "Tyler," Amanda said sharply, "come back here." But Tyler was fascinated by Harold's photo. "He looks nice," he said to me. "Was he a good police officer?" "The best," I said, kneeling down to his level. "He always tried to help people and catch the bad guys." "Like my daddy?" Out of the mouths of babes. I glanced at Amanda, who was crying silently now. "Tyler," I said carefully, "your daddy made some bad choices, but that doesn't make him a bad person. Sometimes good people do bad things when they're scared or confused." Sarah stood up abruptly. "I need some air." She walked out my back door, leaving me alone with Amanda and Tyler. Through the kitchen window, I could see her pacing in my garden, her hands clenched into fists. "Mrs. Blackwood," Amanda said quietly, "I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen. The question is, what are you going to do about it now?" "I don't know. Bradley said he'd take care of us, that once he got things sorted out financially." She laughed bitterly. I was so stupid. "You were young and you believed someone you loved. That doesn't make you stupid." Tyler had wandered into my kitchen and was examining the pancake batter Sarah had abandoned. "Can I have breakfast?" he asked Amanda. "We should go," Amanda said quickly. "I just wanted you to know about him. I thought he should meet his father's family before..." "Before what?" "Before I take him away from here, before we disappear and start over somewhere else." I stood up slowly, my joints protesting. "Amanda, running away isn't going to solve anything. Tyler deserves better than a life spent looking over his shoulder. What choice do I have? If the police investigate Bradley's finances, they'll find the title transfers I helped him hide. I could go to jail. Tyler could end up in foster care." That's when Sarah came back inside, her face set with determination. "No," she said firmly, "that's not going to happen." Amanda looked up at her in confusion. "What?" "Tyler is Bradley's son. Like it or not, that makes him family. And family doesn't abandon each other, even when everything falls apart." I felt a surge of pride for my daughter. Despite having her world destroyed just 3 days ago, she was thinking about protecting an innocent child. "I don't understand," Amanda said. Sarah sat down across from her. "It's going to take me a while to forgive you for the affair. It's going to take me longer to trust you. But Tyler doesn't deserve to pay for the choices his parents made." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we figure this out together. All of us." And that's when my quiet little house became the center of something I never could have predicted. By the time Detective Martinez arrived at my house the next morning, we'd turned my living room into a war room. Amanda had brought all the documents she could find related to her work with Bradley. Sarah had printed out every financial statement she could access, and I'd organized everything into neat piles across my coffee table. Tyler was in my kitchen, eating cereal and watching cartoons on my old tablet, blissfully unaware that the adults were trying to keep his mother out of federal prison. "Mrs. Chen," Detective Martinez said after I'd made introductions, "I understand you have information about Bradley Morrison's asset concealment?" Amanda nodded nervously. She'd barely slept, and it showed in the dark circles under her eyes and the way her hands shook when she reached for her coffee cup. "I need you to understand," Martinez continued. "Anything you tell me can and will be used in court. You have the right to an attorney before we proceed." "I can't afford an attorney," Amanda said quietly. "Actually, you can," Sarah said, sliding a business card across the table. "I called my divorce lawyer this morning, Jennifer Walsh. She's agreed to represent you pro bono." Amanda stared at the card like it might bite her. "Why would you help me?" "Because Tyler needs his mother, and his mother needs legal protection." Martinez settled back in my husband's chair and pulled out his digital recorder. "Ms. Chen, let's start with your relationship with Mr. Morrison and how it evolved into a business arrangement." For the next 2 hours, Amanda laid out the whole sordid story. It had started as an affair, yes, but Bradley had quickly realized that Amanda's position at the title company gave him access to real estate transactions throughout the county. He'd convinced her that they were just bending the rules to help clients avoid unnecessary taxes and fees. "He told me it was all legal," Amanda said, her voice getting smaller with each revelation. "He said lawyers did things like this all the time." "What exactly did you do for him?" Martinez asked. "Property transfers, mostly. He'd have clients sign ownership papers, but instead of recording them immediately, I'd hold them for months. During that time, Bradley would, I don't know what he called it, some kind of financial arrangement where he could use the properties as collateral. Sarah looked confused. I don't understand. I'd been following along, and the picture wasn't pretty. He was using clients' real estate as collateral for loans, but the clients didn't know it because the transfers weren't recorded yet. He was essentially stealing equity from properties he didn't own. Martinez nodded grimly. It's a form of mortgage fraud, very sophisticated, very illegal, and very federal. Amanda was crying now. I swear I didn't understand what we were doing. He made it sound like paperwork technicalities. How many properties? Martinez asked. 17, maybe 18. Amanda pulled out a notebook with shaking hands. I wrote everything down. Dates, amounts, client names. The detective took the notebook and flipped through it, his expression getting darker with each page. Ms. Chen, you realize this represents over $2 million in fraudulent transactions. Amanda went white. Sarah reached over and took her hand. What kind of sentence would she be looking at? Sarah asked. For her level of involvement? Without cooperation, probably 10 to 15 years. With full cooperation and victim restitution? Martinez shrugged. Maybe 3 to 5, possibly house arrest if she has no prior record and a dependent child. Tyler chose that moment to wander in from the kitchen, his face smeared with cereal milk. Mommy, why are you crying? Amanda wiped her eyes quickly. I'm okay, baby. Just talking to some nice people. Tyler climbed onto my lap with the casual confidence of a child who'd decided I was safe. Are you going to help my mommy? I looked down into his innocent face and felt my heart break a little. We're going to try, sweetheart. Martinez closed his notebook. Ms. Chen, I strongly recommend you take the cooperation agreement. Full disclosure, complete testimony, and assistance in recovering the stolen funds. In return, the prosecutor will recommend the minimum sentence and supervised release. What about Tyler? Amanda asked. If you cooperate, and if the court accepts the agreement, you'd likely serve 18 to 24 months. Tyler could stay with family during that time. Amanda looked around my living room desperately. I don't have family. My parents died when I was 20. Bradley was all I had. No, Sarah said firmly. He wasn't. Amanda looked at her in confusion. Tyler could stay with us, Sarah continued. With me and Mom. Temporarily. Until you get out. I felt Tyler's small body relax against me. Even at 4 years old, he understood enough to know the adults were talking about his future. You'd do that? Amanda whispered. After everything I did to your marriage? I'd do it for him, Sarah said, gently touching Tyler's hair. No child should pay for their parents' mistakes. Martinez was watching this exchange with the expression of someone who'd seen too many families destroyed by crime and not nearly enough put back together. There's one more thing, Amanda said quietly. Something I haven't told you. We all waited. Bradley didn't just steal money from his law firm and defraud real estate clients. He's been blackmailing people. The silence in my living room was deafening. What kind of blackmail? Martinez asked, his pen poised over his notebook again. Information, personal information, from the title company files. Amanda's voice was barely a whisper now. People's financial records, mortgage applications, background checks. He found things, affairs, bankruptcies, hidden assets, and he used them. Sarah looked sick. How many people? At least a dozen. Maybe more. Amanda pulled out another notebook, thicker than the first. He made me compile files on anyone who might have information that could hurt his career or his reputation. I felt a chill run down my spine. Amanda? Was I one of those files? She nodded miserably. He had me research your finances, your medical records, your social connections. He was looking for leverage to use if you ever became a problem. Which I did, I said grimly. Which you did. But Mrs. Blackwood? Amanda looked at me with something like admiration. He couldn't find anything. You're exactly what you appear to be, a retired teacher with a clean record and a small pension. It drove him crazy. Tyler was falling asleep in my lap now, exhausted by the tension he couldn't understand but could definitely feel. I stroked his hair gently while the adults planned his future around him. Detective Martinez, I said quietly, how long do we have before this gets public? The arrest warrant for the blackmail charges will be filed Monday morning. After that, it'll be all over the news. I looked at Sarah, then at Amanda, then down at the sleeping child in my arms. Then we have 48 hours to prepare for the storm. Sunday morning brought reporters. They started showing up around 7 a.m. First just one van from the local news station, then 3 more, then newspaper photographers with telephoto lenses camping out across the street from my house. By noon, my quiet residential street looked like a media circus. Junior associate charged in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme, Sarah read from her phone. Blackmail ring exposed in county real estate scandal. She looked up from the screen with tired eyes. They're calling Bradley a mastermind. I snorted. Mastermind? The boy couldn't mastermind his way out of a paper bag. Tyler was pressed against my living room window, fascinated by all the activity. Why are there so many cars, Grammy? Grammy. He'd started calling me that yesterday, and it melted my heart every time. People want to know about your daddy's mistakes, I said gently. Are they mad at him? Some of them are. Tyler considered this seriously. Are you mad at him? I thought about how to answer that. I'm disappointed in the choices he made. But Tyler, your daddy being in trouble doesn't mean anything bad about you. You understand that, right? He nodded solemnly, then pressed his nose against the window again. That lady has a really big camera. Sarah's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and sighed. It's Jennifer Walsh. She answered on speaker. Hi, Jennifer. Sarah, I'm outside your mother's house, but I can't get through the media gauntlet. Is there a back way in? Through the garden gate, I called out. The alley behind Maple Street. 5 minutes later, Jennifer Walsh was sitting in my kitchen, her briefcase open and legal documents spread across my table. She was a sharp-featured woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd fought her way to the top of a male-dominated profession. Amanda, Jennifer said without preamble, the prosecution has accepted your cooperation agreement. Full immunity in exchange for complete disclosure and testimony. Amanda sagged with relief. What about prison time? 2 years, suspended to 18 months with good behavior. You'll serve it at minimum security. And Tyler can visit every weekend. Jennifer pulled out another document. There's also a provision for Tyler's custody during your incarceration. She looked at Sarah and me. Are you both certain you want to take this on? Legal guardianship of a child whose father is going to prison and whose mother will be incarcerated for the next 18 months? Yes, Sarah said immediately. I nodded. We're certain. Good, because there's something else you need to know. Jennifer's expression darkened. Bradley's blackmail files contained information about Judge Harrison. Detective Martinez, who'd arrived with Jennifer through the back garden, leaned forward. What kind of information? Financial records showing regular payments to a woman who wasn't his wife. Payments that stopped abruptly 3 months ago when the woman threatened to go public. I felt the pieces clicking into place. That's why Bradley thought he could forge guardianship papers with Harrison's signature. He was blackmailing the judge. And when the blackmail payments stopped, Harrison became desperate enough to consider signing legitimate guardianship papers to help Bradley get access to your assets, Jennifer continued. Sarah looked confused. But you said the papers were forged. They were. But Harrison was supposed to sign real ones later this week. Bradley's arrest prevented that from happening. Martinez shook his head. Judge Harrison is going down with the ship. Judicial corruption, conspiracy to commit elder abuse, fraud. He's looking at federal charges. Through my kitchen window, I could see the media crowd was growing. 3 more news vans had arrived, and someone had set up what looked like a podium on my front lawn. They're treating this like a presidential resignation, I muttered. Tyler wandered into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. He'd been taking a nap on my sofa, exhausted by the chaos of the weekend. Grammy, those people are walking in your flowers, he said seriously. I looked out the window and sure enough, a cameraman was trampling through my prize-winning roses to get a better angle on my front door. That's it, I said, standing up with the kind of righteous fury that had once made unruly teenagers quake in their shoes. Nobody messes with my roses. Mom, Sarah said warningly, don't do anything. But I was already heading for the front door. Mrs. Blackwood, Detective Martinez called after me. Remember, anything you say will be recorded and broadcast. Perfect, I replied, opening the door and stepping onto my front porch. The noise was immediate and overwhelming. Shouted questions, camera clicks, the whir of video equipment. Microphones appeared in front of my face like flowers blooming in fast forward. Mrs. Blackwood, How long have you suspected your son-in-law was a criminal? Did you know about the blackmail scheme? How do you feel about your daughter's marriage being destroyed? Are you pressing charges for the attempted guardianship fraud? I held up one hand, and surprisingly, they actually quieted down. 40 years of teaching had given me a voice that could command attention from the most unruly crowd. First, I said clearly, get out of my flower garden before I call the police and have you arrested for trespassing. The cameraman in my roses backed out quickly, looking sheepish. Second, I have a statement to make. And then I'm going back inside to take care of my grandson. The word grandson sent a ripple of excitement through the crowd. This was a new angle they hadn't expected. Bradley Morrison is a thief, a liar, and a coward, I said matter-of-factly. He stole money. He cheated on his wife. He tried to have me declared incompetent so he could steal my house. And he blackmailed innocent people to cover up his crimes. The reporters were scribbling frantically, recording every word. But, I continued, he's also a father to a 4-year-old boy who had nothing to do with any of this. A little boy who deserves a chance at a normal life, despite his father's choices. I looked directly into the nearest camera. My daughter and I will be raising Tyler while his mother serves her time for her part in Bradley's schemes. We're going to love him, protect him, and make sure he grows up knowing that other people's mistakes don't define his future. The questions started flying again, but I held up my hand once more. That's all I'm going to say. We're a family dealing with a difficult situation, and we'd appreciate your respect for our privacy while we heal. I turned to go back inside, then paused. Oh, and if anyone else steps on my roses, I'm turning the sprinklers on. As I closed the door behind me, I could hear the reporters already crafting their sound bites. But for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like I'd taken control of the narrative. Tyler was standing in my hallway, his eyes wide. "Grammy, you were on TV." "I was, sweetheart. Were you telling them about my daddy?" I knelt down to his level. "I was telling them about you and how much we love you." He threw his small arms around my neck. "I love you too, Grammy." And in that moment, despite everything that had happened, despite all the pain and betrayal and legal complications still to come, I knew we were going to be just fine. 3 months later, I was standing in my kitchen making Tyler's lunch when Detective Martinez called with news that changed everything. "Mrs. Blackwood, we found the money." I nearly dropped the peanut butter jar. "All of it?" "Most of it. Bradley had been hiding it in offshore accounts under his mother's maiden name. We recovered about $1.2 million of the $1.4 million he stole." I sank into my kitchen chair, overwhelmed. The victims would get their money back. The real estate fraud victims would get compensation. Justice was finally being served in full. "There's more," Martinez continued. "Bradley's cooperation has been exceptional. He's provided evidence that's helping us prosecute a much larger fraud ring operating throughout 3 counties. What does that mean for his sentence? Probably reduced from 7 years to 4. He could be out in 2.5 with good behavior." I looked across my kitchen to where Tyler was coloring at the table, his tongue sticking out slightly in concentration as he worked on a picture of our house. In 2.5 years, he'd be almost 7, old enough to have real conversations about his father's choices and their consequences. "How's Amanda doing?" Martinez asked. "Better than expected. The minimum security facility has been good for her. She's taking online courses, learning bookkeeping, legitimate bookkeeping this time. Tyler and I visit every weekend." "And your daughter?" I glanced toward the living room, where Sarah was on a work call. Her divorce had been finalized last month, and she'd thrown herself into her nursing career with renewed energy. She'd also started dating again, a kind radiologist named David who treated Tyler like his own son and brought me flowers every Sunday. She's healing. We all are. After I hung up with Martinez, I sat down next to Tyler and examined his artwork. He'd drawn our house in careful detail, the front porch, the flower garden, even the bird feeder Harold had built 20 years ago. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. It's for Mommy," he said proudly, "for when I see her tomorrow. She's going to love it." Tyler had adapted to our unconventional family situation with the resilience that children possess. He understood that his daddy had made mistakes and was learning to do better. He understood that his mommy was away, but would come home eventually. Most importantly, he understood that he was loved and safe. "Grammy," Tyler said, not looking up from his coloring, "when Daddy gets out of timeout, Will he come live with us too? I considered my answer carefully. Tyler had started calling prison time out after I'd explained that sometimes when adults make very bad choices, they have to go away to think about what they did wrong. That depends on a lot of things, sweetheart. Your daddy will need to find a place to live and a new job when his time out is over, and he'll need to prove that he's learned from his mistakes. But he could visit, if he wants to, and if the grown-ups think it's safe and good for you. Tyler nodded seriously and went back to his coloring. Children accept complex family situations much more easily than adults do, I'd learned. They don't need everything to fit into neat categories. Sarah finished her phone call and joined us in the kitchen. That was David. He wants to know if we'd like to go to the zoo this weekend. Can we, Grammy? Please? Tyler bounced in his chair excitedly. Of course we can. Later that evening, after Tyler was asleep, Sarah and I sat on my front porch with glasses of wine, watching the sunset paint my neighborhood in shades of gold and orange. Mom, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you ever regret it? Taking all this on? I looked at her with surprise. Regret what? Getting justice for Bradley's crimes? Keeping Tyler safe? Helping Amanda get a second chance? All of it. The investigation, the media attention, the custody arrangement. Your quiet retirement got turned upside down. I sipped my wine and considered her question. Sweetheart, my quiet retirement was starting to feel like a slow death. I was just existing, not living. This whole situation, as terrible as it's been, reminded me that I still have something to contribute. But you could have just called the police when you first suspected Bradley. You didn't have to orchestrate this elaborate investigation. I smiled. You're right. I could have handled it differently. But then Bradley might have gotten away with a lighter sentence. Amanda might have gone to prison for longer. Tyler might have ended up in foster care. So you planned it all to protect them? I planned it to protect everyone, including you. You needed to see Bradley for who he really was. Not just hear accusations from your mother. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. I loved him, Mom. Despite everything that came out, despite all the lies and the stealing and the cheating, I loved who I thought he was. I know you did. That's what made this so hard. Do you think he ever really loved me? It was the question she'd been carrying for months, the one that hurt more than all the financial betrayal and legal complications combined. I think Bradley loved the idea of you, I said gently. The stability you represented, the respectability, the cover you provided for his other activities. Whether that's the same as loving you, I don't know. Sweetheart, I don't think Bradley knows either. Through my kitchen window, I could see Tyler's nightlight glowing in the spare bedroom that had become his room. We'd painted it blue and filled it with books and toys and all the things a little boy needs to feel safe and loved. Mom, Sarah said quietly, thank you. For what? For fighting for us, for all of us, even when we didn't know we needed fighting for. I reached over and squeezed her hand. That's what mothers do, sweetheart. We fight the battles our children can't fight for themselves. And what about Tyler? He's not technically your grandchild. I looked at her in mock horror. Sarah Elizabeth Blackwood, don't you ever say that again. That little boy calls me Grammy, sleeps under my roof and eats my cooking every day. Biology doesn't make family. Love does. We sat in comfortable silence as the streetlights began to flicker on and my neighbors settled into their evening routines. My quiet street had returned to normal after the media circus of Bradley's arrest and trial. The reporters had moved on to other scandals, other stories, other people's pain. But we remained, 3 generations of an unconventional family, held together by love and determination and the simple belief that everyone deserves a second chance. Mom, Sarah said eventually, I have something to tell you. What's that? David proposed. I nearly spilled my wine. Sarah, when? How? Why didn't you tell me immediately? She laughed at my reaction. He proposed an hour ago on the phone. He said he couldn't wait until this weekend to ask. And? I said yes. I hugged her tightly, my heart swelling with joy and relief. My daughter deserved happiness after everything she'd been through. There's one condition, though, Sarah continued. What's that? He wants to adopt Tyler after we're married. If Amanda agrees, of course. He wants us to be a real family. I felt tears spring to my eyes. What did you tell him? I told him we already are a real family, but I'd love to make it official. As if summoned by our conversation, Tyler appeared in my kitchen window, rubbing sleepy eyes and looking for his Grammy. I waved at him and held up one finger, indicating I'd be right in. "I better get him back to bed," I said, standing up. "Mom," Sarah called as I reached the door. "I love you. I love you too, sweetheart. Both of you." But as I tucked Tyler back into bed and listened to him whisper his prayers, I couldn't shake the feeling that our story wasn't quite finished yet. There was still one more surprise waiting for us. The surprise came in the form of a letter that arrived on a Tuesday morning exactly 1 year after Bradley's arrest. I was making Tyler breakfast when the doorbell rang, and instead of a delivery person or neighbor, I found a well-dressed woman I didn't recognize holding an official-looking envelope. "Mrs. Eleanor Blackwood?" "Yes. I'm Catherine Mills from the State Bar Association. I have something that belongs to you." She handed me the envelope, which was thick and heavy, sealed with an official stamp. "Mr. Morrison asked that this be delivered to you personally." After she left, I sat at my kitchen table and opened it with Tyler, watching curiously from his booster seat. "What is it, Grammy?" "I'm not sure yet, sweetheart." Inside was a handwritten letter from Bradley, along with what appeared to be legal documents. The letter was 3 pages long, written in the careful script of someone who'd had plenty of time to think about every word. "Dear Eleanor, I know you have no reason to trust anything I say, but I hope you'll read this through to the end. I've spent the last year in prison thinking about everything that happened, and there are things you deserve to know. First, I want to apologize, not just for the financial crimes or the attempt to have you declared incompetent, but for underestimating you so completely. You outplayed me at every turn, and honestly, it was masterful. My cellmate says I got beaten by a grandma with a grudge, but that's not what happened. I got beaten by someone who was smarter, more prepared, and more determined to protect her family than I was to exploit them." I paused in my reading. Tyler was finishing his cereal, humming to himself, blissfully unaware that his father was finally taking responsibility for his actions. The real reason I'm writing is to tell you about something I discovered while cooperating with the federal investigation. Remember Judge Harrison, who I was blackmailing? It turns out he wasn't the only corrupt judge in the county system. There's been a network of judges, lawyers, and court officials taking bribes and fixing cases for years. Real estate fraud, custody battles, estate probate cases. They've been manipulating the system for their own profit. My blackmail scheme accidentally exposed the tip of a much larger iceberg. The FBI is using my information to build cases against 14 different officials. The corruption goes back at least 8 years, maybe longer. Hundreds of families have been affected. Estates stolen, custody unfairly awarded, property illegally transferred. I felt a chill run down my spine. The implications were staggering. But here's the thing, Eleanor. There's a reward. A substantial federal reward for information leading to the conviction of organized corruption in the judicial system. The FBI estimates that my cooperation will result in the recovery of over $8 million in stolen assets. The reward is $750,000, and I've instructed them to give it to you. I set the letter down, my hands shaking slightly. $750,000, enough to secure Tyler's future, pay for college, set up trust funds, ensure that Amanda had the resources she needed to rebuild her life. I know you're probably suspicious of this offer, wondering what the catch is. There isn't one. I can't receive the money while I'm incarcerated, and even if I could, I owe over $300,000 in restitution. This money would just go to lawyers and creditors. More importantly, you're the one who started the investigation that led to all these discoveries. If you hadn't been smart enough to document my crimes and patient enough to build a bulletproof case against me, none of this corruption would have been exposed. The attached documents are the paperwork transferring my rights to the reward. You'll need to submit them to Agent Patricia Hendricks at the FBI field office in Richmond. I want Tyler to have a future that isn't defined by my failures. I want Sarah to know that some good came from all this pain. And I want you to know that even though I fought you every step of the way, I respect the hell out of what you accomplished. Tell Tyler that his daddy is learning to be a better person. Tell him that the mistakes I made don't have anything to do with how much I love him. Thank you for taking care of my son. Thank you for not giving up on Amanda when it would have been easier to walk away. Thank you for being the kind of family Tyler deserves. Sincerely, Bradley Morrison. P.S. The roses in your front yard are beautiful. I can see them from the prison transport bus when we go to court hearings. Tyler's lucky to have a grandmother who cares enough to make everything beautiful, even in the middle of chaos. I was crying by the time I finished reading. Not for Bradley, exactly, but for the man he might have been if he'd made different choices. For the father Tyler could have had, and maybe still might have someday. "Grammy, why are you sad?" Tyler asked, climbing down from his chair to hug my leg. "I'm not sad, sweetheart. I'm grateful." "For what?" "For second chances. For family. For roses that keep blooming even after they've been stepped on." An hour later, Sarah was staring at the legal documents with the expression of someone who'd been hit by lightning. $750,000? Apparently so. From Bradley? From the FBI, technically. For information that helped expose the corruption ring. Sarah sat down heavily. "Mom, this is life-changing money." "It is indeed. We could pay off your mortgage, Tyler's college fund, get Amanda a fresh start when she gets out." "We could," I agreed. "But first, we need to verify that it's legitimate." 3 days later, Agent Patricia Hendricks sat in my living room confirming that yes, the reward was real, and yes, I was entitled to receive it. "Mrs. Blackwood, your son-in-law's cooperation has been invaluable. We've arrested 11 people so far, including 3 judges, 4 attorneys, and 2 court clerks. We estimate that their criminal network stole or misappropriated over $12 million during the past decade. And this was all uncovered because I caught Bradley stealing from his law firm? Your investigation was the thread that unraveled the entire sweater. Without your documentation and willingness to build a comprehensive case, we never would have discovered the larger conspiracy." Tyler was playing with his blocks in the corner, building what he called his police station, an elaborate structure where the good guys always won and the bad guys learned to make better choices. "Agent Hendricks," I said, "I want to establish a foundation, something to help other families affected by white-collar crime. Can the reward money be used for that?" "Absolutely. Actually, that's a beautiful way to honor the other victims." 6 months later, the Blackwood Family Justice Foundation held its first annual dinner. Tyler, now 5.5, helped me cut the ribbon on our new office building. Sarah and David, married 3 months earlier in my garden, served as the foundation's co-directors. Amanda, released early for exceptional cooperation, worked as our financial counselor, helping other fraud victims navigate insurance claims and asset recovery. And Bradley? He was released after serving 2 years and 4 months. He found work as a paralegal for a firm that specialized in helping white-collar criminals reintegrate into society. Every other weekend, he visited Tyler at our house, slowly rebuilding a relationship with his son. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There was still awkwardness, still pain, still consequences that would ripple through our family for years to come. But it was something better than a fairy tale. It was real. Tyler was playing in my garden one Sunday afternoon when Bradley arrived for his scheduled visit. As I watched them through my kitchen window, I saw Tyler show his father the vegetable patch we'd planted together, explaining seriously how tomatoes needed water and sunshine and patience to grow properly. "Just like people," I heard Tyler say in his matter-of-fact 5-year-old voice. "Grammy says people need love and sunshine and patience to grow into who they're supposed to be." Bradley knelt down to Tyler's level. "Your Grammy is very smart." "I know," Tyler said proudly. "She's the smartest Grammy in the whole world." As I watched my grandson and his father tend to our garden together, I thought about the strange journey that had brought us all to this moment. 1.5 years ago, Bradley had walked into my house with fake papers and a plan to steal everything I owned. Now, he was teaching his son the difference between weeds and flowers in the garden I'd taught Tyler to love. People can change, I realized, not easily, not quickly, and not without consequences for their past actions. But they can change. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very stubborn and very willing to fight for what's right, justice doesn't just punish the guilty, it redeems them. Tyler ran to me as the sun set over our little family gathering, his hands dirty from the garden and his face bright with joy. "Grammy, look what Daddy and I planted." "What's that, sweetheart?" "Sunflowers. They're going to be taller than the house." I hugged him tight, breathing in the scent of dirt and growing things and hope. "I can't wait to see them bloom, Tyler." They'll be beautiful, he said confidently, because we're going to take really good care of them. Yes, we are, I agreed. Yes, we are. And in my heart, I knew that everything we'd planted, the flowers, the family, the foundation, the forgiveness, would grow into something more beautiful than we could possibly imagine. Because that's what happens when you tend to things with love and patience, and the absolute certainty that tomorrow can be better than today. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.